What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today it is the final 2024 mock draft of the year. So if you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We are going to be streaming tonight with the one and only Bro Schmo because we are the Draft Bros. Feel free to go sub to that show as well. Sub to that show as well as this one, because this is where we get all this great content. We're going to be jumping into 2025 content as well as we're going to be trying to dabble in some more awesome things, like just actually talking about normal football and not just what's going to come up on 3 days of the year. Let's get on with this. Below my face is my board. It is changing still because I'm finalizing my opinions. Of course, not really much is going to be changing in the top 32, but let's get on with it. I will be posting rounds 2 and 3 on my Twitter. So it is technically 3 rounds, but I'm not going to label it that way because I don't want to mislead you guys. When I have 2 videos, I can do that. When I'm not going to be doing 2 videos, not going to do that. So I will actually upload rounds 2 and 3 for my final mock draft there. So follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. 1,400 subscribers over there, or followers over there. Let's get right into this. Starting with the number 1 pick. Let's save ourselves time because I'm on lunch, and I'm sure that you guys don't want to waste your time listening about the Caleb Williams soliloquy. So Caleb goes to the Bears. At 2, I will end up still going with the odds-on favorite, and people are very, very confident that Jaden Daniels will be the guy. At 2, fits Cliff Kingsbury's system. This is going to be extremely predictive, so I'm not going to do exactly what I think is the most logical. Even though I do think it's fairly logical to go after a quarterback, and then you can kind of just roll the dice on which type of guy that you want. Jaden Daniels will be the number 2 overall player. At 3, the Patriots, it is, a legitimate debate between McCarthy and May. May has the higher ceiling. He has the much lower floor than McCarthy because McCarthy doesn't miss the easy throws. Like, Drake May does miss the easy throws. You can't blame it on his receivers. I mean, he's throwing balls that are essentially in the dirt. So, but I do think that those high-level throws are there. The comp is to Jordan Love, who did end up going later in the first when he came out. So it's not unlikely that he can slip. But J.J. McCarthy still has had plenty of boneheaded decisions there. And, it is... We'll talk about it when the time comes, but basically I think Drake May is going to be the guy, and I think the Patriots are going to stick and pick at 3. Definitely could see an offer from the Giants that entices the Patriots for them to take maybe J.J. McCarthy at 6, but it's going to be very difficult in order to make that happen. But at pick number 4, theoretically speaking, if it were a what I would do mock draft, which maybe I could put that up on Twitter as well, if I were the Patriots and I was sold on J.J. McCarthy, I would trade down to 6. And then if you miss out on J.J. McCarthy, you still get, either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Joe Alt. I think that's a pretty good consolation prize for probably an extra first-round pick. But, anywho, we're here predicting today's today's draft rather than, what we would do. We had an entire year to do that. But at pick number 4, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the pick. I just don't think the Cardinals, even though their GM is a mastermind of moving up and down the board, I do feel like that, it's possible to happen again, but I just don't think it does. Marvin Harrison Jr. is very, very tough to pass on. He's almost a guaranteed hit. It's very hard to find those, especially the receiver position, because 27% of them make it to that second contract. If I'm not mistaken, there's a report out there that essentially analyzed the first-round picks and the hit rate based on a second contract. At pick number 5, the Chargers are on the board, and I do think they're going to go offensive tackle, but there's been so many people linking J.C. Latham to the Chargers. I find it very hard to believe that they'd take him at 5, but I still think they'd take him. So this is just, I think it's almost telegraphing a move that they're going to move back. I don't see any team taking J.C. Latham over Joe Alt, and I like J.C. Latham almost as much as Joe Alt. Maybe not to the same degree, but still, I think that it's a fantastic move to be able to get someone who is, similar talent-wise to Joe Alt at an actual position that you're looking for rather than having to project somebody to move to right tackle, and you potentially get an extra first-round pick, and it is just kind of a beautiful storyline for the Chargers to be able to set up J.J. McCarthy, Harbaugh letting J.J. McCarthy go to the team of his choosing. Now, if you wanted to be an absolute douche nozzle, and I debated this while I was at work, I was thinking, do I want to potentially play, do I think Harbaugh is going to be that powerful and go down one pick with the Giants and then down another, essentially allowing the Giants to get JJ McCarthy and, allowing another team to get Malik Neighbors, it's possible. And if that happens, because I was actually debating, so here's like a theoretical that we're not going to put into this mock draft, but I was debating having the Giants move up this to 5, getting JJ McCarthy, and then having the Chargers move down with the Jets, because the GM of the Chargers actually worked, I believe, with Joe Douglas for 10 years in Baltimore's scouting department. You know what? Let's have fun. I know it's a predictive mock draft, but I have a feeling that we might just have the opportunity of a lifetime here. I think the Giants have been trying to trade up for Drake May. They show that they want to get a quarterback, and this is essentially a guaranteed upgrade. I think it'll only take a 3rd round pick to move up one spot anyways. You know what? Screw it. Every other mock draft's going to have a trade up. This is a live one, by the way. It's going to have a trade up with the Vikings. And I think if the Vikings don't get Drake May, they might not be over the moon about sending 2 firsts for JJ McCarthy. So the Giants end up spending a 3rd round pick to move up to select their guy in JJ McCarthy. I still think that, the Vikings will offer. But this way, the Chargers are sitting here at pick 6. They acquired an extra 3rd round pick. And you certainly could get Malik Neighbors here. You can get Joe Alt here as well. But again, I just talked about that connection to Joe Douglas here in the Jets. In the Jets, either they're going to go Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors by moving up here. But I think that they're in win now move. And the Chargers are more so in acquire draft capital mode, especially if you want to get J.C. Latham. So I do think maybe you net a future 1st round pick. Maybe you have to send pick 110 back, because that's a very expensive trade. Like, for the sake of this, it doesn't actually matter about the compensation. I think that the Chargers can set themselves up for the most success by getting higher value picks down the line rather than sticking and picking with your guy. So the Jets end up moving up. I think Joe Alt would have been a phenomenal option here, but I've been hearing it's Malik Neighbors that has the Jets' eye. So, last year I had the Cardinals move down and then move back up. Might see something similar happen. I don't know. Again, this is live, but I'm going to try to be as realistic as possible because, again, I love the fact that, before today, I didn't even understand that connection, but it makes total sense. Do you not think the Jets are going to be on the phone at least calling to ask about it? And do you not think Harbaugh wants future 1st round picks to give him the most success down the line? I think all that is true. This pick at 7 for the Titans, I've seen some rumors that it's Rome Odunze. There's 1 year left in DeAndre Hopkins' deal. They just paid a good amount of money to Calvin Ridley. They are in a position where they could be trying to look for a succession plan. I don't think that's a smart move because your left tackle spot is vacant. And I think this class is a little bit overrated in terms of the starting talent. I think overall in the talent, it's perfectly rated. It's a great class. But when you're looking at a position that you need to start, you need to get a starter. And Joe Alt is a starter. I don't think they're going to pass on it. Let's not get too cute with it. Joe Alt is going to be the starter. At pick number 8 for the Atlanta Falcons, I do think the Chargers would be potentially in the mood to move up for Rome Odunze at this point. I don't think that's out of the question by any stretch of the imagination. I have seen rumors that the Bears are also not only the Bears are in the market for Rome Odunze, but they're also in the market for Byron Murphy. I think if the Bears do that, they'd be doing that by a trade back, not by anything else. I do think there's going to be offers that come in for this pick for Atlanta Falcons. I do think that they are going to lean Dallas Turner, but again, if we do a chalk mock draft, every single time we are proven wrong. It is okay to take risks. And this time, I'm going to take a risk. You had Raheem Morris there in Los Angeles. He ended up sniping Byron Murphy in the 3rd round. Granted, he sniped Kobe Turner, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of the 3rd round as well. But he had Aaron Donald. This team has Grady Jarrett, but they do not have a second defensive interior that I have any faith in. Remotely close to Aaron Donald. Byron Murphy could be that. So, I'm actually going to take a big swing here. This defensive interior class is weak. It just is. You're looking at guys like Braden Fisk, Michael Hall, who are very talented pass rushers, but they're very relatively one-dimensional. You look at Byron Murphy, he is an every down starter. A little bit on the light side, sure, but Aaron Donald was playing at a lighter weight as well. If you can play at that lighter weight for both phases of the game, run and pass, then you are going to be successful. And I think that Raheem Morris understands that. So Byron Murphy is going to be the pick there. A dark horse pick I can easily see is Terrion Arnold. I've already brought it up several times as well in terms of the defensive coaching, basically loving similar archetypes of players in Trent McDuffie as well as Devin Witherspoon. So totally could see that being the case. But Byron Murphy, because this is a pretty loaded corner class, I think might have a little extra value. For the Chicago Bears, I'm calling a curveball here. I've been hearing Rome Odunze is going to slide out of the top 10. And I don't know if that's going to be a false rumor. I think they're going to listen. And they're going to listen really hard to Caleb Williams. And they're going to like Olu Fashanu. I don't know if they take him here at 9, though. Olu Fashanu was the left tackle for Caleb Williams in high school. So keep that in mind. I do think that a team should be excited for Rome Odunze. I don't think you can move past 14 and end up still getting left tackle in Olu Fashanu. You're basically going to have to bet that, one of these 4 teams here are going to try to move up. Now, we do have 3 teams here that are looking for a quarterback in the Broncos, the Vikings, as well as the Raiders. But I don't think Bo Nix or Michael Penix are going to be top 10 picks. Now, when you analyze the players on the board, I do think Terrion Arnold is a dark horse player to be moved up for. Quinion Mitchell as well. I think the Raiders are going to be looking for a quarterback, offensive lineman, and corner. I do think this is in their field house, but I just think it's too expensive. So, looking at the options available, I do think the Chargers are going to want offensive line. The question is, do they want it day 1 or day 2? If you can get Rome Odunze by a small trade up, I think that's a smart thing to do. And I do think that the Bears like Rome Odunze. They've already had him practice with Caleb Williams, right? It's just tough for me to let Olu Fashanu, that storyline, walk, because that left tackle spot is not perfect. It is a massive upgrade, and you have instant familiarity with the quarterback. I don't think anybody bites. I don't. I just don't see it being feasible for the Bears to move back and still get him. So they're going to take best player available. And, I'm going to just say, I think they want for Rome Odunze to slide out of the top 10. It's not going to happen. So there you go. Rome Odunze goes to the Bears. Again, he already has now reps with Caleb Williams too. So, it certainly is. I don't think anybody's going to be mad with that outcome. I just think realistically, the Bears will try to move back. And, I think the team standing in their way is the Saints. If the Saints were not there, I think they'd be willing to trade back much further, i.e. for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that's a very likely spot for them to have moved up for Rome Odunze. But, it is what it is. At pick number 10, the Chargers are sitting here on the board. And I said they're going to go J.C. Latham. I totally believe they could go Brock Bowers. Harbaugh loves his tight ends. But I do think he loves J.C. Latham. This team is looking for a right tackle of the future. He can also kick into guard in the short run in case he has those early on struggles, because they do have Pipkins for one more year. So J.C. Latham is going to be their guy. At least you get an extra first out of it. At pick 11 for the Minnesota Vikings, I do think that this is a prime opportunity potentially for even a trade back. I do see Brock Bowers is available. I do think a team should move up for Brock Bowers, and I could see a couple teams in here in the mood to take him. But I also see some very talented offensive linemen available and corners. I think the Minnesota Vikings would be very wise to be able to move back. And looking at the offensive linemen available, there is Olu Fashanu here, who is a true left tackle and probably the only true starting left tackle without legit injury concerns or guard transferability on the board. So I did think the Bears would be willing to go potentially moving back. But at 11, I think the Saints are a gutsy team, and I think the Saints are going to want to move up to get their guy. I'm worried about Tali Fawaga potentially being a guard. I'm worried about Troy Fautanu's knee. And also he has an issue with power. Like, his bull rush anchor is not good. Amarius Mims might slip because of inexperience. And then you're pretty much asking, there's no guaranteed starter at tackle on the board. So you need to move up for it, because I can guarantee you the Raiders would be in the mood potentially for Olu Fashanu. I can guarantee your ass that there's a lot of other teams that'd be in the mood to potentially move up for Olu, because there are teams calling to move up for offensive tackle. And I don't think that's exactly what people think it means. I think it ends up telling people that, hey, this class is not as good as we think. Its talent is great, but its starting talent is more questionable than what meets the eye. So we're going to be moving up with the New Orleans Saints. And this is a short-range trade here. I think this is actually going to be something that's dealt for a future third-round pick. Maybe you toss in some sweetness over here. But I actually think the Vikings are going to want a little bit extra capital. So I do think it will be like 150 and maybe a future 4. This is relatively the same range as the Steelers move up. Maybe it'll be a future 3rd right there. The Vikings are cap strapped in terms of their draft capital on 2024 and 2025. So we're going to offer this trade and move back with the Vikings, move up with New Orleans to select Olu Fashanu. I say Fashanu, it's Fashanu. Pick number 12 for the Broncos. This is also going to be a trade. This is the Philadelphia Eagles. I know Howie's going to get a little antsy. You look at those top 30 visits, and there's actually a really good graphic that splits them into the different rounds. There's like almost nobody who's brought in on top 30 who are consensus round 2 guys. There's guys who's flex round 2, but you have a later second round pick for that. The majority are in the 1st and the 3rd round. I think that he's willing to sacrifice a second and even potentially move back into the 3rd and get multiple 3rds. I don't think he's focusing on the 2nd round. I think he's focusing on either moving up or moving down. And the thing is, when you have really great talents like this, there's a lot of rumors that he's going to be moving up. You could certainly see the Eagles, like, by the way, maybe you can toss in 161 because I think that's the common deal right now. So we'll just toss that in there for sure. But the Eagles have not drafted a corner in the 1st round since 2002. That doesn't mean that it can't happen. Also, offensive line, the Eagles love to draft it, even in the 1st round. I just worry that Toli Fuaga, with his length concerns, could end up not actually starting. And then the tackles, again, I've already had my issues with them. The depth tackles are worth it. If you could somehow land Blake Fisher, even Brandon Coleman, Roger Rosengarten, who you brought in on a top 30 visit. Also, he responded to one of my DMs. Cool dude. Respect for that. Caden Wallace, which you didn't bring in on top 30, but I certainly think should be on your board. These guys can kick into guard, and they can end up playing your future right tackle. I think Howie's smart enough to understand what you can end up getting down the line, and you need someone who could start on your team immediately. And Quinion Mitchell could, but the moves in the offseason in terms of being able to, or having to keep your top 2 corners in Slay and Bradbury, top 2, but you also, in the best case scenario, have Ricks and Ringo develop. Those guys are not able to play in the slot. Worst case scenario, sure, Quinion Mitchell will be a great upgrade, but you might overpopulate your boundary when the slot matters a lot in the NFL. Some people say it's 95%. I say it's 100% as valuable, depending on what division you are in. And I think that Terrion Arnold, especially when you're going into the Super Bowl where teams have Hall of Fame, or not Hall of Fame, but Pro Bowl, if not all pro level receivers in the slot, you do not want that to be a weakness. And right now it is a big weakness. Terrion Arnold is the selection. Elite EQ, elite IQ. This guy is my number 3 player in the class, and I am not afraid to say it. We do see the edge rusher slipping a little bit here, though. So at pick 13 with the Las Vegas Raiders, I do see Dallas Turner, but I have seen him slip quite a bit. It is what it is. The edge rusher, again, the edge rushing need for a starting edge rusher in the NFL has been decreasing a lot lately. Just, we've had good drafts. We have. And in free agency, teams have acquired. So at pick 13, though, I do think the Raiders will be in the market for a quarterback. I do. And you got Bo Nix here. You also have Michael Penix. It's been linked to them. I don't know if it's round 1 or round 2. I'm going to be conservative here and go round 1. Michael Penix. The throws, his tie-in throws, are extremely impressive. It's just the down-to-down that might be a little bit more questionable. But the Raiders have guys who are relatively solid down-to-down and don't have the jaw-dropping plays. Michael Penix does. It's worth taking a swing on. At pick 14, the Vikings have moved back. And I do think that you could end up getting Bo Nix here. I heard that the Vikings really like Bo Nix, but I feel relatively comfortable maybe making a move up a little bit later for Bo. When you are sitting here at 14, I mean, this is a team that certainly could use a top-end edge rusher to add to their rotation. I know you just brought in a true edge one, but when you get Dallas Turner for you on the board, it's hard to say no. I would say Tali Fawaga should be in the consideration here 100%, but I just think that if the right edge rusher is there, they're going to take him. There's not many edge rushers on this team that are on multi-year contracts as well. Dallas Turner needs to have in a really, really good mentor. And when you have somebody who just played with Dallas Turner's former mentor and former teammate and Will Anderson, then it makes a lot of sense to kind of just pair up the former Houston edge with a new Bama edge rusher. So pick 15 for the Indianapolis Colts. Dallas Turner would have been phenomenal. Brock Bowers and Quinyon Mitchell are here. You know, it is what it is, but I do think that, you know, it's going to be very hard to resist Quinyon Mitchell. This team has sniped some good DBs after round number 1. They have more so focused on, you know, D-line as well as weaponry or as big play positions in round number 1. I don't know if you could let Quinyon Mitchell slip any further. So I'm going to be drafting Quinyon Mitchell to the Indianapolis Colts. At pick 16 for the Seattle Seahawks, this is going to be a move back potentially. I do see Tali Fawaga here. I don't know if they would pass on that. Like, I do think they would try to move back and get extra draft capital because Brock Bowers is here. But at the same time, you know, you certainly do have a really good player here in Tali Fawaga that is going to be very, very difficult to say no to. It fits the exact need that you're looking for, a potential right tackle of the future, but an elite guard in the short run. Brock Bowers certainly should be on the short list of guys as well, but we're going to go to Tali Fawaga here out of Oregon State. Pick 17 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We are seeing those edge rushers slip a little bit. Latu certainly could end up slipping for potential concerns with his neck. I don't think they're actual legit, but it certainly is possible. Pick 17, though, for the Jaguars. I do think wide receiver is certainly a move here. I have heard rumors that Brian Thomas's shoulder is a little bit of a concern. A.D. Mitchell's personality is a little bit of a concern. But at 17, I'd put those concerns aside. Granted, I'd be willing to move back with a team that wants to move up for Brock Bowers. I mean, or you could say a quarterback as well. I mean, I certainly think that the Vikings could certainly try to jump right now, but, you know, you don't need to do that. It's very tough to say, though, because the Bengals, I don't think, would say no to going after wide receiver if you do move back and get Brock Bowers off the board, and because of already of the tackle issues I've talked about. So I do think the Jaguars might actually stick and pick. And if they stick and pick, they love their fast guys. Of course, A.D. Mitchell is too, but Brian Thomas never has really had a personality concern from what I know. And so that's going to be a really valuable trait. He's also used to playing in very humid climates there. LSU, granted, Georgia is pretty damn awful as well, where A.D. Mitchell was once from before this year. But regardless, Brian Thomas doesn't have the personality concerns that A.D. Mitchell does. At pick 18, though, for the Cincinnati Bengals, certainly can see this be a move back, but I already talked about potential issues with defensive interior. I certainly think Jerzon Newton could be an option here, but I don't think they'd let Brock Bowers slip any further than this. I think this is the spot where Brock certainly will come off the board. It's a low value position. It really is. And there's not that many teams that are going to be desperate for a minute upgrade in terms of the return on investment. So I just don't see it being overwhelmingly popular that Brock Bowers goes higher. I'm going to be very surprised if he does fall this far, but at the end of the day, good players fall. Players go after need and value, and, you know, if it were up to me, I would have taken him over J.C. Latham here at pick 10, but that didn't happen. Pick number 19 for the Los Angeles Rams. So quarterback, not out of the question here. I mean, Bo Nix met with all 32 teams. I certainly think it's possible, but I think Latu makes too much sense here at this point. He's a fantastic edge rusher. Jared Verse does as well, but Latu's right there in LA, can continue to keep him there in LA. That being said, I mean, I'm going to try to trust Peter Schrager here. We're not going to go after pure logic here. We're going to actually try to go after some insight. Peter Schrager said it's going to be offense or move back. With 2 more edge rushers on the board, this certainly could be a spot for a move up. And you do see some good tackles on the board. Fautanu is great. I think he actually can complete the Rams offensive line. Alaric Jackson for 1 year, $4.5 million does not move me off of Fautanu. Granted, his knee could be an issue, but if they want to make a push for 1 more year, it kind of makes sense to go after Fautanu. Corner as well, some really good options on the board. I actually think that if the Rams stick and pick, they're going Fautanu, and I don't really have a great offer to move up that would make me feel comfortable moving back. I mean, the Bills would be a really intriguing one, but there's no more left tackles I trust than Troy Fautanu, and it's a big drop-off in my opinion. Pick number 20 for the Steelers. Would have loved Fautanu to the Steelers, but we're sitting here with some really talented players on the board. I do think the Steelers would have wanted to move up, and the rumor is that it is for Quinion Mitchell, so right here at 15. But I do think that this is a team that is going to be prioritizing potentially wide receiver with A.D. Mitchell, who's going to pair very well with George Pickens. But, I mean, I'm looking at some teams that certainly should be in the mood to move up for these edge rushers, and I might end up getting a consolation prize of Amarius Mims if I move back. Khan is a guy who thinks very, very logically here, and I think he might solve both issues at once. I'm going to factor in a trade of Brandon Ayuk here. So, yeah, I mean, call it nutty. It is what it is. But the Steelers are essentially sending a future first along with pick 20. Maybe it'll be a future second. Feel free to negotiate on your own. But the Niners are going to be moving up, and the consolation prize is going to be Brandon Ayuk. I think that this is great for both teams because the Niners move up, and they're going to be able to... I mean, the Niners are great at acquiring new capital anyways. I mean, they do it all the time with compensatory picks, but I mean, they do a great job at buying low and selling high. Granted, this is not a situation where that happens, but I do think the Steelers are going to be on the phones with the Niners the whole time. The Niners are going to see A.D. Mitchell slipping to this point, but they're also going to see, I mean, A.D. Mitchell is the ideal receiver for the Niners, but essentially you're going to be able to move up, select your top-end receiver or your top-end offensive tackle in Amarius Mims, which would be great. I did move back with the Steelers, but I do think that the Steelers are now in striking range of some more very talented offensive linemen as well as corners. I think if the Niners end up executing this trade, they go and select A.D. Mitchell. They don't have to deal with Brandon Ayuk having to give him a massive contract. You have a lot of contracts that you're dealing with as it is. And now you also end up getting your top-end wide receiver. I don't think I've really agreed with very much that the Niners have done in the past. So I'm not going to fully agree with this move. But I do think the Niners are going to try to capitalize on Brandon Ayuk, get some extra draft capital, and end up getting their guy. At 21, the Miami Dolphins are sitting on the board, and this is going to be a small trade. I'm going to send the Minnesota Vikings up to jump the Denver Broncos. And, you know, the Vikings, I think this will cost maybe a future, or like maybe pick number 129. It actually will be probably less. It'll probably be 150, maybe 157. But the Dolphins need to get extra draft capital. This is a super small move, and the Vikings end up selecting Bo Nix. So they end up getting Dallas Turner and Bo Nix. That's a pretty nice consolation prize. The Broncos end up getting shafted, but you can end up getting Latu or Verse. I'm actually going to predict that Latu slips for health reasons. Not too many top 30 visits, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're going to project and predict that he slips. So Jared Verse ends up being the selection there at 22. At 23 for the Dolphins, they're looking at Johnny Newton here, absolutely. There was a beautiful piece put on the most recent mock draft that I did with A to Z Sports that ended up talking about like the offensive line logic, so to speak. And you know, basically, there's not that much value placed on the offensive line because of how the offense gets the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly. You essentially just can't let up quick wins. So that's why they don't really value investing in it early on. So I'm going to trust that logic because it actually is pretty damn sound. And I might actually look at Xavier Worthy here. I think realistically, he does go around this high. You ended up getting some extra picks for him, and he's going to end up being selected here. The need for speed continues. At pick number 24 for the Dallas Cowboys, certainly think that they could be in the move to trade out. That's what I've heard, is that they're actually open to trading out of the first round, which a little bit wild to me, but you know, I certainly believe if they want to move out, get not Joey Porter Jr., the other JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, it certainly is on the table. I do think that it is still feasible to go after Keon Coleman because he's the cousin of CeeDee Lamb. This team needs a wide receiver too. But I'm going to say that Keon Coleman might slip out of the first. And I think, if I may predict, that is why they are trying to move out of the first, because they're going to be going after him. With Latu still on the board, maybe slipping for medical reasons, but still a really talented player. I could totally see a team trying to move up and just securing their top edge guy. One of those teams being the Detroit Lions. They could certainly get gutsy at this point because they need an edge. They need interior offensive line. They need corner. They'll get a good corner if they sit and wait. But you can't get the value of Latu because I think the Cowboys are going to try to at least move back first. And, you're looking at some teams that might want Cooper DeJean. Certainly Latu's gone by 26. So I am going to make a move up with the Lions here because I do think the Lions certainly are still in a great position to move up only 5 spots. I think it will be 73 and they end up getting back something like maybe 174. Feel free to do negotiating on your own. But the Lions move up for Latu, edge rusher out of UCLA. At pick 25 for the Green Bay Packers, let's not try to act like there's something crazy going to be going on here. We're going to be going Cooper DeJean, corner out of Iowa. Could end up being a strong safety for them depending on what falls on the board. Pick 26 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I find it hard to let Nate Wiggins slip past this point. He is a fantastic corner. He's actually risen up my board noticeably because, there's just, when I end up sitting and thinking about players, like, there's guys who I just have a good gut feeling about, and Nate Wiggins didn't grade as high as maybe I thought he would, but the coverage side of the game, he graded very, very well. And I do think that this team certainly could be in the market for Graham Barton as well. And I think, to be fair, if you want to go for a win now, you got to win through the trenches. We're going to be going Graham Barton, offensive lineman out of Duke, center/guard/tackle versatility. They valued that because they got Robert Hainsey years ago. That's not the reason why they would take one in the first round, but at least they like that positional versatility. At pick 27 for the Arizona Cardinals, I certainly believe Johnny Newton is on their radar. He may be tough to coach, but you know what? Gannon's dealt with some uncoachable talents in his time that have still performed very, very well. So, not uncoachable. That's a bit of an extreme. But I'm essentially justifying my route for Johnny Newton, who usually slips out of first-round mocks, but I do think in a very thin defensive interior class, it will be essentially what the move has to be. I think the Buffalo Bills are a great team for a move back as well. I just don't really like the options that are placed in front of them. And I think this is an opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers to make their move. So the Steelers ended up acquiring Brandon Ayuk, and now they're making a move up with the Buffalo Bills for a 3-spot move. I think it doesn't even cost $119, so it might get $119, maybe $200 in return. But the Bills are going to be moving back. The Steelers are going to be moving up, and they select Amarius Mims, so they end up getting Brandon Ayuk as well as Amarius Mims. At 29, the Dallas Cowboys are sitting there. They did move back. I certainly think Jackson Powers Johnson is on the board for them. I don't think that that's out of the question. He is a late first to early second type of guy. To me, he's an early second type of guy. But I do still think, because center is very undervalued in the NFL, you have an experienced quarterback. They don't provide too much value, so to speak. And this is a good center class. You can get guys like Hunter Norzad later on. You can get some good wide receivers later on too. Might be the reasoning that they use to not go after wide receiver at this point. But you got to look at that connection. Cousins with CeeDee Lamb, who they're trying to talk to right now. Talk about like a really good way to show that you're buying in on CeeDee Lamb for the future. Keon Coleman out of Florida State. That's going to be the surprise pick for the Cowboys. They ended up moving back, getting good draft capital, end up selecting their guy. At pick 30 for the Ravens, they ended up getting shafted of Amarius Mims, but they're still going to end up getting a top-tier talent here in Tyler Guyton. Guyton might end up going before Mims, so maybe the Steelers don't need to move up at all, but Guyton is still a fantastic product, a really top-tier right tackle. Amarius Mims is as well, but maybe that chemistry is going to be a little bit more valued. At pick number 31 for the Buffalo Bills, I think this is, again, a team that should be trying to move out of the first round. You got some very talented cornerbacks here. You have some good offensive linemen here. And looking at the offensive tackle class, you still have some dudes who certainly should be considered, but I just don't really see the value in them. We've seen all the quarterbacks come off the board, There's certainly something to be said about that. We usually get humbled every year, but I think the Bills are going to want to play defense, so to speak, against Kansas City here. And Ladd McConkey is awesome, but he does have those injury red flags that popped up. I'm going to go Xavier Leggett. He has a great story. I'll let you go to Brett Coleman's Twitter to be able to talk about that. But he's one hell of a dude. He's funny as hell. He might not be really worth a top 64 pick, but I know if he goes to the Chiefs, he's going to work out and be a really damn good receiver. So I think the Bills would love to be sitting 10 minutes, having the Chiefs sit 10 minutes away from getting a stud receiver and watching it fade before their eyes. I don't think Xavier Leggett's a great blocker. That's my biggest issue with him, honestly, was the fact that he didn't like to block. But I think that can easily change. So excited for that for Buffalo. And at pick 32 for the Chiefs, kind of hard to let Nate Wiggins slip past this point. I certainly think a team could move up for him. There's personality concerns. It's a reason why he's slipping in my situation here. Jordan Morgan could be a sneaky one because I do think offensive tackle could be there. Surprise first rounder certainly could end up being Patrick Paul, who's going to be outside of my top 100, around like 150-ish on my board. But NFL offices apparently like him more than what we do. Do with that as you will. I still think Jordan Morgan should be considered here. I really do. He is going to, you have multiple interior offensive lineman contracts coming up. They're going to be worth $20+ million each, minimum. Trey Smith as well as Creed Humphrey. Both of those dudes are going to be probably $20 to $25 million. You can't pay everybody. And I do think Jordan Morgan, if he doesn't work out at tackle, is a great contingency plan to work out as an interior offensive line. So that is going to be the video. Holy shit. This is going to be honestly, it's, again, not something that I necessarily will do, but something that I really do love. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching, showing the love that you always do. See you on the far side. Peace.